couple of questions that arise immediately is there an employment contract in writing? Under Dutch law, it's not even necessary to have a written employment agreement. It could also be a verbal agreement. So that's a thing you would need to check first. Is there a valid contract? Was it for a fixed term? Has it expired, or was it a permanent contract? So what do we have in writing? Also, if there's a written employment agreement, what's in there? Does it include a non-competition provision? Does it include a confidentiality arrangement? And of course, does it, like it was mentioned before, does it include an IP rights clause? These are important things to check. Under Dutch law, it is quite common to agree upon these type of arrangements. So it's quite easy to agree upon with the employee that he cannot compete with his employer, that he cannot poach away employees, and that IP rights are owned, so to say.
One major issue of Brexit, of course, is it makes such transfers outside of the EU of people much more difficult. You can no longer just say free movement of people. And so you'll need to take some immigration law advice on that. And it may be that you can utilize any links that those individuals already have in the UK that might make it easier because they can somehow get in as some link to a UK national. But if not, you'll have to take advice and be able to show why these particular people are needed for this business, rather than, you know, someone else in the UK who's already there, a British national who could do the job. You absolutely have to have a written agreement. You cannot just have a verbal employment agreement. And actually senior contracts for these sorts of people have additional director clauses and are actually quite long and complicated. So if they just have a verbal agreement in the Netherlands, you'll have to explain to them why they might have a longer document in the UK.
So we've got the company set up, and our owners are key to ensure that the key management are given some equity incentives in the business, which, you know, will give them a sense of buy-in and a longer term commitment to the business, and might also be useful helping the company conserve some cash for its expansion. You know, cash will be tight even if they do manage to have a successful fundraise, and giving some of the employees, key employees, equity may mean that you don't need to tempt them with large salaries. So the owners can think of a few alternatives. I mean, one of them, of course, is that you could issue some shares up front to the key managers. But this does have some issues. Companies sometimes don't want to have minority employee shareholders in place from day one. Might have to give them minority protections, and also potentially harder to get the shares off them if they are bad leavers. There could also be some income tax issues if you are getting the shares into their hands without payment. They'll probably have an income tax charge up front, which is unattractive, especially if they were to subsequently lose the shares, and then they wouldn't get a tax refund. But having said that, companies sometimes issue the shares up front nil paid, which means although you've got to pay for them down the track, because you've committed to pay for them, you don't incur any upfront tax. Or they could think of issuing a new class of maybe growth shares, which have little upfront value, but will only share an upside above a certain threshold or hurdle, in which event, hopefully, they'd only pay capital gains tax when they sell the shares. But let's assume here, just for argument's sake, they don't want to issue shares, and actually what we go for are share options and the tax advantaged enterprise management incentive scheme, EMI. Great share option scheme, very flexible, aimed squarely at companies such as ours, young independent trading entities. And the big tax advantages of EMI, as many of you will know, is that There's of course no tax on the grant of the option, which is the same for all options in the UK, but in particular, unlike unapproved options, there'd be no income tax on the exercise of the option, provided the exercise price was at least the market value of the shares on the date of grant. So provided you do that, then the gain that they ultimately make when they sell the shares will only be taxed at capital gains tax rates, possibly even a 10% rate, and you only pay tax when you actually sell.